Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green is here, the also co-host of the Georgia Voice of College Football over there on YouTube. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back with you. Big weekend. It's like kind of I feel like the NFL draft is that like a little dose of college football and pro football you get in the spring. Hey, let's kind of remind you what's on the horizon. But you get your fix for a little bit.
I will say, I love the first night of the draft. I watched all 32 picks. I love the first round. Everything after the first round, I'm done. Like, I just get updates on my phone, and then I check throughout the NFL.com draft tracker and that kind of stuff. But there are people out there, the real ones, if you don't who don't cover the NFL draft for their day job, who are like, man, I'm locked in round 4, pick 53. I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? And I'm not built like that. I got to continue on with my day and all that kind of stuff. And Tennessee obviously playing a big series in Baton Rouge over the weekend and all that good stuff. But I don't know. Are you one of those people who lock in for multiple rounds, or are you a first round and out person?
I will say, if I'm not doing anything like that Friday, Saturday for rounds like 3 through 7, I'll probably have the draft on, because it's solid, just solid content to just watch. Like, oh yeah, I remember that guy when he played against whoever. But this weekend I would just happen to be doing things, kind of over the weekend. So it was a lower priority. But yeah, I'm definitely on the draft tracker, just like every few minutes, just like, oh, round 4, Shedeur still hasn't been picked. Oh, that sort of thing. But it wasn't. So I kind of go both ways. I'm not gonna hate on the dude that's locked in to all 7 rounds. I can definitely get it.
I just think about that Bill Burr bit where he's like, the Jets are up next. And he's just the guy who just sits there and for the entire draft, and he's just locked in to all the picks and stuff like that. I always have Bill Burr's voice in the back of my head. The Jets are up next.
See, if anything, I might I'm not gonna say criticize what you said, the person who likes the first round but doesn't like the rest of it.
That's me.
The first round, it obviously is bigger impact players. These are first round picks, franchise changing players for the most part. Or at least a lot of them will be. But that's so like made for TV, like drama and everything. It's like the next few rounds is just like, let's just name. It's like 5 minutes on the clock. Let's go name after name after name. Like, who's best available? Like, it's kind of more happening. I feel like the first round is like 30 picks take like 3-4 hours. So it's like the rounds 4 through 7 probably take like 2 hours,
Well, also, why, it's weird. This is something that needs to be, this is a 2-parter. Part 1, why do you get 10 minutes right as the draft started if you're the Titans? Shouldn't it start with the Titans making their pick and then the next team is on the clock? Like, you've had months. Like, you've been on the clock for months. Like, you don't get 10 minutes to start this thing. Like, the clock starting with 10 minutes for the Titans with the number 1 overall pick makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense that we do that, right?
We had that exact conversation. It's like, you've been on the clock for 4 months. What are we doing here?
Exactly. Like, if you don't have a pick in guess what? You lose the pick, or we make it for you. Auto draft.
Yeah, you're gonna hear trade offers till the end. Like, you're hearing trade offers for the last 4 months. Yeah. Like, if you didn't do it then, come on.
Sorry,
I'm with you there.
Also, it just doesn't look fun. I will say, like, there were so many people at this event for Green Bay, and they're like the people who are way back, and I'm just like, is that fun? Is that a fun way to spend like 3 to 4 hours? I don't know. That's not me. Maybe it's just because I'm now in my mid-30s here, Matt Green. But I looked at that event and I'm like, I think I'm good. I don't think I need to go to the draft. The only draft that looked fun was the in New York, like in where it's just in that almost, what is that, like theater venue? Where do they used to do it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, they've done it at Radio City Music.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Radio City looks cool. Like, I would pack myself into Radio City for one event. Like, that'd be fun.
Something like that, has like concessions and stuff. Like, if we're just all just outside of Lambeau Field, like, are you just in a huge crowd? It's like New Year's Eve. You're just kind of boxed into this huge area. Like,
that's what it looked like.
I don't know. Like,
there was tailgating going on. I don't know.
I actually went to a WNBA Atlanta Dream draft party last
Mm.
year. And it was at some restaurant in Atlanta, but it's like your ticket paid for, like, you know, you could go to the buffet and like all that, like having a draft party at some sort of establishment, like, yeah, TVs, whatever, drinks, food, but like just going in a huge crowd. I don't see the appeal in that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, we're on the same page here. We are on the same page here, Matt Green. But because it is NFL draft week, I thought it would be fun for our Pod Divided Vols vs. Dogs segment here to kind of have an NFL draft theme. Georgia, I mean, how many did they have? 12 ended up getting picked, I want to say. Because Ohio State had 14, right? How many?
13 ended
13.
up going for Georgia. Did Ohio State have more?
Ohio State had 14, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, and then Tennessee, I think, had 4. With Dante, Omar, Pearce, and Dylan Sampson. So that was their 4. But a lot of guys got signed after the draft, like Amari Thomas with the Saints, and a couple others. But yeah, so we'll talk about the 2 different drafts here. But I thought it'd be fun. I know you're not as like inundated with all the teams and the depth charts and the rosters and all that, but when you look at all the different dogs who got drafted here across the board, I mean, Smile Munden goes to continue on the Philly Dogs tradition. You have like Jared Wilson going to New England, good history of centers in New England who went to Georgia. You got obviously the big one, Jalen Walker.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and then Jalen Walker going to the Falcons, and you just like Michael Williams across from Bosa in San Francisco. There's a lot to choose from. I mean, there were some surprises like Arian Smith going in the middle rounds to the Jets, or Dan Jackson getting drafted late, which is a cool story by the Lions. But even ETN, the Panthers in the 4th round. So there's a lot of options here for the Dogs.
You just nailed it all, man. You covered all.
That's only half, like that, because you had 13. I think I needed like 6 or 7 guys, but there were several more. I can keep going. Tate Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild. But what say you, Matt Green? Which fit did you like for the Dogs?
And speaking of like what you said to kind of preface your statement, I think that's why I love the draft coverage, is because they understand there's a lot of people that are just college fans that just want to watch and see where all these college players are going to play. So I love how they like have the college guys also talking about the draft and everything. But I'm not a Falcons fan, but this Georgia Falcons thing has just been in such like a narrative for so long. It was really cool to see Jalen Walker go 15th. It'd be nice if they had Jalen Carter and Jalen Walker on that defense. Then you wouldn't have Bijan Robinson. So whatever that's worth. But yeah, I mean, seeing the Eagles get another Georgia Bulldog, that's probably my favorite part of the draft, because I think Smile Munden is also a super underrated player because he's had his injuries. I'm not going to say he's necessarily Alec Ogletree, but I feel like he kind of was on the trajectory to become a guy like that, just like a super long athlete at the linebacker spot. But he has had his injury issues. So to get him in the 5th round, nice to add to that Philly team. But yeah, like you said, Tate Ratledge and Dan Jackson to Detroit. Dan Jackson is just an amazing story. Like from walk on to getting drafted in the 7th round, like Dan Jackson's a player. So I think most Georgia fans feel very vindicated too, because there was a lot of criticism of him not getting an invite to the combine. And the fact that he ends up getting drafted is like, yeah, this guy should have gotten an invite to the combine, most likely.
Well, it is interesting too, because one of the guys we didn't even mention who got drafted to the Lions, because 3 guys I think went to the Lions, Dominic Lovett, who went in the last round with Dan Jackson. Were they back-to-back picks, I want to say? Or they were right there. I don't know.
Right there. Maybe not back-to-back.
But it's one of those where, like, we do forget that, like, what was his Damian Martinez, who got picked super late, Miami running back who left Oregon State from Miami's for his last year. Like, it didn't really help. Like, he got a little bit more money, I guess, by going to Miami from Oregon State, but it actually didn't raise your draft profile. And it's one of those where I think some guys it's a give and take, because Quinshon Judkins, it didn't affect him really. Going to Ohio State for a year, leaving Ole Miss in that situation. I mean, he still goes early, so that worked out for him. But Dominic Lovett, you saw Luther Burden. He fell a little bit, but he still went in the 2nd round. Dominic Lovett made a jump to Georgia from Mizzou, And I think we can look at that and like that was a bad career move for Dominic Lovett. Like there was some good potential, and I think Georgia fans had high hopes for him at Georgia. And I think he was better 2 years ago than he was this past year. But he lost money going to Georgia, and I think it's one of those interesting things where Dante Thornton raised his draft stock by going to Tennessee, and it worked out for him this final year. But it's always it's more of a risk than I think. Now that we have a lot more evidence and a lot more data, where it's just not always like the grass is not always greener. And some guys, it does benefit to go up a level or to move around a couple times. Some guys, it's like, man, you were in a good spot. Like maybe you should have just stayed there. Maybe Lovett should. I wonder what he thinks. If he's like, man, all things considered, I should have stayed at Mizzou. Or Damian Martinez, like maybe I should have stayed at Oregon State. I don't know. It's just, it's a tough spot for a lot of these kids to be in, but it is something I was thinking about as I was going through all the different guys picked, because that was something I was monitoring of like the guys who transferred and it just did not go the way that we thought it was going to go for them. And it's like, man, you kind of lost some money by chasing the bag or trying to go up one level one final time, even when you were already in a good spot.
That's true, but I don't feel like it was like usage or something that he lost himself money at Georgia. Like he just didn't play very well in 2024. Like Arian Smith gets blamed like he was the only guy dropping passes. It's like it was going around. Everyone was getting in on the drops that last year. So I feel like Lovett, especially, everyone loves to criticize Bobo for all the screens and everything. Like Lovett was supposed to be that kind of athlete that makes plays after the catch, and he just like didn't really. I don't know. Lovett was actually the only guy when I was kind of making my predictions on who was going to get drafted. He was the only one I had. I didn't predict to get drafted that did get drafted. So I had 13, but I thought Stackhouse would get drafted. And he signed with Green Bay. But I love the landing spot of all the first rounders. Like you said, Micah Williams being in San Francisco, just like a team that's just been one of the most consistent franchises in the NFL over the last 5-10 years. And being opposite Bosa on the defensive line. Jalen Walker finally going to Atlanta. And then like Malachi Starks going to the Ravens. You have a defensive player going to the Ravens. It's like, let's go. Like that's always awesome. But the couple takes I'll have is Arian Smith. You said you were surprised by fourth round. I wasn't surprised by Arian Smith at all. I feel like people were talking about like he wouldn't get drafted. I think some people were like, maybe he's a seventh rounder. Yeah. You just can't be that fast. Like, and not get somebody's interest. Like that dude has legit like 4.
Thornton kind of the same way, right? Super speedy at Tennessee, and he goes in the fourth round too.
Yeah, so I think just that raw ability, and Arian Smith had his moments. Like he had like you look at like almost every big game Georgia played in over the last couple years. That 2022 Tennessee game that was so big. Like Arian Smith's like long like 50-yard catch was like one of Georgia's like kind of first big plays in that game. Obviously, the Ohio State game was his best game of his career. He also had, there's a couple. He was just good for like one 50-yard catch, like every single big game. That Notre Dame game where the dude on the sideline got in the way. But he had his moments, and then the Senior Bowl he looked really good. So that didn't surprise me to see him go in fourth round. And then Trevor Etienne, that's kind of where I thought Trevor Etienne was going to go. And when it comes to running backs, a lot of times they talk about that second contract. So, maybe it's just beneficial to get in the league, start making money, and try to get to that second contract. But to me, I don't know what these guys are making NIL wise. I don't know what the starting running back at Georgia's making. I don't know if Etienne could have had $1 million if he came back to Georgia. I don't even know. But being the starter at Georgia for a year versus, and then whatever you're able to collect while you're at Georgia, versus being a fourth round draft pick, I'm not sure which of those is a better decision.
I just feel like if you're a running back, you got to start the contract, the NFL contract. You have to start, like, it's just that position almost more than any other position. I think you got to start the NFL clock as soon as humanly possible because they break down so fast. Like, it's just, you don't want to be going to the league at 24, 23 as a running back, even no matter how good you are. It's just the Derrick Henrys of the world are the outliers. And Alvin Kamara too. It's just yeah, you want to believe you can be that and you can get to that second contract, but you want to put yourself in a position to be a 2-contract guy in the NFL. So the faster you get to the league as a running back, I think the better. Because, I mean, look at Tennessee. They could have really used Dylan Sampson back for one more year, especially now given the circumstances. But it's like, man, I wouldn't have felt good about Sampson being back. I'm like, no, go get paid, go to the NFL, get your NFL career started, and hope for the best. I mean, you don't know. I mean, he went to a spot, Nick Chubb. I mean, you saw what the injuries have done in Cleveland for me. You just don't know what that looks like for you when you get to that next level. And you're one bad injury away in college from not even having any NFL contract money. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to go. Like, I just feel like running backs got to go.
He is a guy that would have basically been 50-50, splitting carries 50-50 for like 4 years. So he wouldn't necessarily have like just a ridiculous workload, like a Jonathan Taylor or a Melvin Gordon kind of workload, like going into the NFL. But no, I definitely do get it. And then the last one is Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I just feel like Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is just such a solid player. Like, he's just going to be one of those guys. Like, he's such a versatile, like, interior or, defensive tackle or defensive end kind of player. So he just feels like the kind of guy you're going to look up and it's like 8 years later, it's like, oh, wow, he's still starting for like a good team. Like, Ingram-Dawkins, he was one of the ones I was disappointed. Him, obviously, in ETN. I felt like he had yet to have his like one great year at Georgia, and kind of how Christian Miller was. I think there's a chance Christian Miller was going to go pro, but decided to stay. Like, it felt like Ingram-Dawkins and Christian Miller both have that great year left in them, and I wish Ingram-Dawkins would have come back in 2025. But I could just see him being such a solid NFL player.
Yeah. Dan Jackson's just a great story. I hope it works out for him in Detroit. So, and I would not be in the business of rooting or betting against Dan Jackson. I will say though, the one thing you mentioned, Malachi Starks, it's definitely probably a perfect fit. He's going to be an All-Pro multiple times in Baltimore. It's just a great you spot for him. That being said, I was thinking about this, where we were talking about before we get started. Like, two things can be true. Jalen Walker is a supreme athlete and a great player, and you can also be worried about Jalen Walker being utilized to the best degree in Atlanta. Like, you can be worried about what that actually looks like. Because Michael, you know exactly what he's going to be off the edge. Like, that's not really a question in what his position is. There are questions in terms of like how to best utilize. Like, yeah, he's great off the edge, or he can do this, he can drop back, he can do all kinds of stuff. And you're like, okay, we talked about it, like the Isaiah Simmons stuff. It's like obviously not a 1-for-1 comparison, but you do kind of worry about guys who are really good at a lot of things, because it's just it's more about the team, not the player. Like, the team, it's on the team to maximize Jalen Walker next season and beyond. But and
you don't trust the Falcons?
It's not a great track record, Matt Green. They have the longest streak in NFL history of not having one player register 7 or more sacks in a season ever. Like, they can't get anyone to have 7 sacks or more, and it's just
not ever. Vic Beasley had that one.
No. I'm saying the longest time between having a player who had 7 or more sacks,
and that was the last one, probably.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. So it's outrageous that they can't have that. And I mean, the Vic Beasley thing we'll talk about, because I had a NFL guy on his podcast who compared James Pearce to Vic Beasley, and it's like, oh no. And I love Pearce, and I'm like, that you traded up, and I'm just like, I'm gonna be, I don't know. I talked to some folks last week about, like, I'm seeing Pearce get mocked to the Falcons every now and then, and it just kind of, I'm like, I love James Pearce, and I don't want to have to be like, oh, this is not working out for the Falcons, and be like, I don't want James Pearce to be a bust on my favorite NFL team. So that would be nice. I don't want that to be the case. I want James Pearce to do well. But
it's funny you say that, because I heard, I think it was Rusty Mansell reported this, that James Pearce was pretty much the Falcons' plan at 15 all along, and they basically had to kind of rework everything when Jalen Walker was available there. So they weren't even really prepared for Jalen Walker to be available at 15, and then were able to still get Pearce. What was it, 28, 27,
26,
something like that?
26.
But yes, that's huge. And it's funny you say that about Jalen Walker, because I actually saw another NFL draft like expert say something similar, of like the biggest like question mark about Jalen Walker, or like one of like the reasons he won't pan out, if he doesn't pan out, it will be like the lack of creativity from his defensive coordinator. Like, it's just, you need to figure out how to use this guy. He's a football player. Isaiah Simmons, I know what you're saying. He was like a safety linebacker, like D end hybrid or something, like edge rush. Maybe he was doing too many things. But Jalen Walker, I feel like it's just inside linebacker, outside linebacker, like whatever you need. I think he's going to be more of an edge rusher in the NFL, but I think his speed, like what he actually could do a little bit in coverage, I think he's just going to be that much more versatile. But I don't know, man. There's not many players that I've gotten more excited watching college football, like in their time at Georgia than Jalen Walker. Like that dude was just chaos. Like just anytime he was on the field, he was making things happen. Like that Texas game, he like single-handedly basically took over that Texas game in the first half, which Georgia basically won the game in the first half. What was the score at halftime of that Texas game? Like 28 to 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Georgia was just like pulling away. I don't think it was that big of a lead, but it was something like that. Like, and Jalen Walker had like 4 sacks and a couple turnovers forced in that first half. Like the dude just makes things happen. And so I think the versatility is definitely a good thing.
I hope so. And I hope it all works out. But it is one of those where I'm like, they finally take a Georgia player. But it's like Jalen Carter, if you take him, it's like I'm not worried about how Jalen Carter's going to fit with the Falcons. He's going to be a good player wherever he goes. Like he's scheme proof. I just don't know if Jalen Walker is scheme proof. And that's my main concern. But we'll see.
Fair.
The Vols part of it, best Vols fit in the draft. I thought it was interesting. I'm glad that Dante, we talked about him at the top here. I think the Raiders is a good fit for him. I think he's going to get an opportunity to play. I think it's a good spot. Geno Smith, good deep ball passer. I like seeing Dante there. I think that's a good fit that he has a chance to stick there. I think Omar Norman Lott in Kansas City, I like a lot. I think he's going to be a multi-year pro. I think he's just one of those guys who's just going to be a PFF graded player. The snap count numbers might not be there, but I think he's going to make an impact. He was kind of like Jordan Davis for Tennessee a little bit, for y'all, where it's like he doesn't have to play a lot of snaps to make a serious impact, where you just look at it and you're like, when Jordan Davis was in the game and you knew when Omar Norman Lott was in the game, it was a really good pass rusher from the interior. That's why he rose up draft boards and had a great Senior Bowl. And Omar Norman Lott's just an easy guy to root for. And he was good. So I just think he's going to be really, really awesome and landed in a great spot in Kansas City. But the one that I'm sure everyone we talked about here, and I should also say, Dylan Sampson now joining a crowded backfield because the Browns drafted a bunch of quarterbacks. It's just a mess. I feel bad for Dylan because it's like it's a crowded backfield. It's a really just insane situation in Cleveland with everything going on there. I hope it all works out. But I didn't love DSamp going to Cleveland. It's just we'll see what that situation ultimately looks like, but it seems a little tumultuous. So I don't know if that's the best landing spot for DSamp, but hope that works out for him. And then
I also wonder what that means for Nick Chubb, for them to go Judkins and Sampson in the draft. They must not think Chubb has much left at all.
How old is Chubb now?
I mean, he can't be that old. What? It can't be like 30.
He
came out in that 20s. He can't be like,
he's got to be like 28, 2018
right? Draft. So I mean, like 6 years.
29. He's 29. I mean, he turns 30 this year. He turns 30 in December.
Yeah, that's like the magic number for running backs.
Yeah, this might be over for Chubb. I mean, that's why you draft Quinton Judkins and DSamp. So maybe that's a good two-headed monster, man. Judkins and DSamp, if they can make that work. But I will say the Pearce part of it is the one that I think is so interesting because James Pearce, he was a really good player. I think he really benefited from, I've talked ad nauseum on this program about James Pearce with Tyler Barron across from him in 2023 and his sack numbers in 23 and why it just was a better all-around year for him than 24. There's a lot of different reasons as to why that was. Some of it was just out of his control, but I still thought he put a lot of good stuff on tape. I still thought he was really effective pass rusher. Even if the sack totals weren't there, he was still causing a lot of havoc and he was winning on the outside a lot. So I still think James Pearce is a really good Leo. That being said, my thing is like less about James Pearce, but it's also just kind of like the Jalen Walker thing with the Falcons, where I'm like, the Falcons, the track record is just so bad with Leos and edge guys. Like it's the worst in the NFL. Like that's the problem, is it's less of a Pearce thing, and they traded up. And then I'm seeing a lot of Falcons fans where you're like, you got to do, if you're a Falcons fan, how can you be nervous? How can you be upset about the team being aggressive and addressing their needs? It's like, well, I mean, okay, I guess they did, kind of, maybe. We'll see on Jalen Walker, but he's not really a sure thing in the Falcons defense. And James Pearce was like, not. I think James Pearce it just depending on who you talk to and how what kind of draft guy you were talking to about him. I don't like the character stuff. Just sucked. I didn't like any of that was coming out about him. I thought it was very ridiculous. But I will say, scheme fit and like what kind of player is he? An every down guy? Like a lot of people I talk to, it's like he's a specialist type where he might be a Vic Beasley type, and that's kind of scary because I like James Pearce, but it's also like Vic Beasley fizzled out pretty quickly. I want James Pearce to have a great long NFL career, but now I have to like worry about this on my team and every Sunday being like, oh God, is he going to be the one? Because there's a lot of pressure now on Pearce. Like, I don't think Jalen Walker has the same kind of pressure because everyone just looked at it. Oh, the highest drafted Georgia player in Falcons history. They finally did it. They finally drafted a Georgia player. Jalen Walker is going to walk into that building and that fan base of just like, yeah, awesome. Love Jalen Walker. Pearce is going to be enemy number one because they traded back up for Pearce into the first round. The guy that they were, like you talked about, like with Rusty reporting of like, that was the guy they were going to take anyway. And then Jalen Walker had to be there or happened to be there. So the plans change. But I look at all that and I'm like, man, Pearce is now, they added more pressure to Pearce to be an instant impact guy off the edge because of the circumstance and how he got drafted and all the hype there with it's like, oh, we got Pearce and we got Walker, these two SEC stalwart pass rushers. And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I hope it all works out, but now I'm just going to be stressed about James Pearce being an effective player week one.
Yeah, I know some Florida fans that are Falcons fans that their opinion of Kyle Pitts isn't the same as it once was.
It's the same. Yeah, it's that. Like, I imagine that sucks because you're like, I watched this dude be awesome in college, and Georgia couldn't stop a wheel route with Kyle Pitts to save their life. They were just spamming wheel routes with Pitts in the Georgia-Florida game. It was like, you can't do anything with Kyle Pitts, and you're like, what, this unicorn player? And then you watch him for your team for years, and you're like, this is the worst. This is not the Kyle Pitts that I remember from my favorite team, and now I don't like Kyle Pitts on my team. It's not fun, and I don't want that to be the case for Pearce.
In fairness, though, the one game that year that Kyle Pitts was so good, Georgia took him out of that game. Lewis Seen almost decapitated him, and it got ejected for targeting.
Did he?
So we did.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, you remember that? It's like one of the hardest hits I've ever seen, and honestly, it's a whole nother topic. I don't know if it is truly targeting. It was just such a bad hit. It was such a vicious hit that was like, yeah, it sent Kyle Pitts. Like, he missed the whole second half of that game. But in terms of, you remember that? Did you see a video of it?
Also, it's crazy when this game took place. 3-1, 4-1 Georgia. Okay, this was very early. In the COVID year.
Is that right? It was like the 5th game of the year.
That's what it was saying. Yeah, fifth for Georgia, 4th for Florida.
Interesting. Because JT Daniels, I think, got like the last 4 games of the year, and they only played like 10, 11 games. Was it Georgia's 9-2, I think, that year? But regardless, what was your point about? I went off on a tangent about about James Pearce and Jalen Walker. It's also like with James Pearce, he's on the team for one reason, and that's to get sacks. And so if he's sitting at 5-6 sacks or something, then the fans like James Pearce isn't doing enough. But Jalen Walker, because of his versatility, it's like, oh, he doesn't just rush the passer. He also does other things. There might be a little more, as well as Georgia fans being Falcons fans, there might be a little more grace for Jalen Walker than James Pearce.
We'll see. Well, Matt Green, we have a Matt's Minute, and this is also going to pertain to the NFL draft and some quarterback stuff over the weekend. But what do you have for us this week on Matt's Minute?
All right, sir. Matt's Minute. Is it just me, or does sports like discourse just kind of suck now? Like, just watching it's a product of social media, and I know like politics and stuff are super polarizing and everything now, but it's just everyone just trolls everyone. Like, that's all anyone's ever doing anymore. And so like I was like, with the Shedeur Sanders stuff, like I was obviously turned off by some of the things Shedeur Sanders did in the last couple years, some of the antics, some of the me stuff, like the Dylan Raiola thing. You remember that when after the Nebraska game, just like, oh, how many sacks they give up or what, just kind of throwing your offensive lineman under the bus. So I get some of the criticism of Shedeur. But like the prank phone call is just like, oh no, it's so weak, man. It's like these guys are waiting for like the this life-changing phone call, and like, he's got a whole camera crew and just like trolling him and everything. It just kind of
that was horrible. That was just wrong. Like, you watch it and you felt like gross. Like, that's one of those where like you felt gross after watching it.
I really did. Like, even if it was a great prank as far as pranks go, it's messed up. Like, you didn't hurt anybody, but it's just messed up, dude. Like, what was already going through this guy's mind, kind of how embarrassed he was and everything. Apparently, a Bama fan did it too. Isaiah Bond too also got pranked. Like, someone was calling him, and he ended up getting undrafted. Like, so like that's kind of, I don't know. It's just kind of miserable, you know. Yeah. But like I think the idea of that NFL teams were colluding against Shedeur Sanders is like one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, I think Stephen A. Smith was saying that. Like, there's just no way NFL teams were doing that. Maybe just kind of misevaluate how much you thought teams wanted this guy, or how maybe you underestimated how much his character was a red flag for some teams. And then you obviously know there's every draft, there's maybe 15, 20 teams. They either have a good quarterback or just drafted a quarterback in like the last year or two. So the market is only so big for a quarterback. Like, there was like 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first 3 rounds. Like, that's I don't know what the stats are all time, but that's got to be pretty low. You know, like 1, 2 in the first round, 1 in the second round, I think. But
I mean, it's a historically bad quarterback draft. If you look at next year, like I was looking at a PFF mock today for 26. It's like 6 quarterbacks in the first round next year. It was just, this is a bad QB draft.
Yeah, I think so. And so I was definitely surprised, you know, Shedeur was left. But I just felt like too many people were just getting too much joy out of Shedeur Sanders falling in the draft. Yeah. Like, that's just kind of, that's kind of what my overall thing. Like, the idea that the NFL teams are sending a message to Dion, like, about what? Like, what would they be sending? Like, oh, well, he's retiring his number and all this. It's just,
they want to win games. Their jobs are on the line. They're not trying to do that. Like, it's just not. But I also, to your point, like, people got to let stuff breathe. Can the draft finish? And it's also not unprecedented that guys fell far beyond what we thought they were going to get drafted, because it's like, we're mocking what we think. Like, your sources and intel, like, you're doing the best you can to create the best picture of you can of how things are going to go. But I mean, that's happened before. Like, that's happened where, like, the Kenny Pickett draft, where it's like you had one quarterback go in the first round, and that obviously didn't work out. But people are like, they were talking themselves into a couple, like, oh, there'll have to be someone in the first round. And there were people like, there's no way Jackson Dart's a first round quarterback. And then Jackson Dart goes in the first round of the Giants. It's like, you're all doing the best you can to formulate what it's going to be. But like, remember, and I think it was Colin Cowherd or someone I was listening to over the weekend made a good point about, like, because Mel Kiper was the star of all of this in terms of how he was handling Shedeur continue to fall. The thing that I think it was Cowherd, but I can't remember for sure who brought this up, of like, because like the Kiper part of it is, he was saying the NFL just doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. It has a bad history of it, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, this is part of that story, is that like they misevaluated Shedeur. And if Shedeur is good, he'll prove that they misevaluated him and they overthought him. And a lot of teams will end up regretting not taking Shedeur. Like, it will play out in the football field one way or the other. But it's happened before. Tom Brady went late in the draft. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. Joe Montana was a middle round quarterback. He is arguably in the top 3 of all time quarterbacks. Like, you look up and down the list of quarterbacks who have, Tony Romo was undrafted. Tony Romo is Kurt Warner. Like, like, you go up and down the list, there's all kinds of quarterbacks who have fallen, who made the best of it, or it's like, you think about it now and you're like, I can't believe that guy fell. This is not unprecedented that a quarterback fell, like, in the draft. Like, it's the most important position, so it gets the most eyeballs. But I think if Shedeur is good, which is very possible, I like Shedeur coming out. Like, I thought, like, there was a lot of Matt Ryan to him. I thought just NFL, like, just what I saw at Colorado. I think he could be a good, long-time starter in the NFL. That being said, like, I don't know. Like, it's just not, I don't know why people were just getting so up in arms about all of this, because I'm like, it's not really that surprising, because this stuff happens in the draft. Guys fall. Like, this free fall was pretty, I wouldn't say unprecedented, but pretty surprising. But this happens sometimes. Guys fall. And like, if Shedeur is really good, then Shedeur will make it work and he'll be in the league for a long time. Like, guys, figure it out. Good quarterbacks, stay on. Brock Purdy was the last player picked in the NFL draft and started a Super Bowl game. Like, it doesn't matter ultimately where you get drafted, as long as you get drafted or you get in the league and you make the most of your opportunity. Like, people were wrong about that. People have been wrong. NFL teams have been wrong so many times, and quarterbacks are so hard to evaluate coming out of college that like Johnny Manziel was a first rounder and gone. Like that was a terrible pick by the Browns. Like he went first round and just did not work out. Like, so there's the opposite of effect where it's like, oh, like obviously you got to take a chance. Tim Tebow went in the first round. Like it doesn't, just because you went early doesn't mean that's a guarantee. Like, I don't know. I just think it's all very silly that this like was just such a strong talking point and people were just so heated throughout the weekend about this, because the unprecedented part where I'm like, well, I mean, look at the history. Like I just kind of laid out there, and that other people like Cowherd and other analysts have talked about with all the different guys in the past, like the Romos and the Warners and all that.
Yeah, I would say what's unprecedented might be a guy who was projected by some to be a first rounder and went all the way to the 5th round. Like that might be unprecedented. But like I mean, Mel Kiper's not wrong. Like teams get picks wrong all the time. Like that, I mean, that 2018 draft, like where you had Baker go first overall. Like Baker's obviously really good, but I wish they'd have drafted Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Like Josh Rosen went.
The Ravens took Hayden Hurst before Lamar Jackson. Like they traded back into the first round to take Lamar Jackson. They took Hayden Hurst first.
Yeah, so they make mistakes all the time. Mitch Trubisky over Watson and Mahomes. It's like I would have at least understood Watson. You know, no, I don't. I don't give penalize the Bears for not knowing about Mahomes, because no one knew Mahomes was going to be that good. But it's like Watson was so amazing in college. Like that seemed like if you were just going to make the easy pick, it would have been Watson. And he'd have gotten a few years of good quarterback play before they went downhill. But I just, but that brings me to my other point though. But I agree with you about a lot of the Shedeur Sanders stuff. It's crazy that people were so wrong about him, but it's also like if teams aren't drafting quarterbacks where you think they're going to draft quarterbacks, that changes the whole draft, you know? And
right.
Then if certain teams don't need one or however they feel.
Matt, there were people leading up to the draft with like Kyle McCord. Don't be surprised if he sneaks into the first round. Or Tyler Shook. Remember that Tyler Shook was going to be the first quarterback taken potentially after Cam Ward.
Jalen Milroe was there, wasn't he? I think
Jalen Milroe was 3rd round. Yeah, Jalen. That's what I'm saying. Like there were guys. Jalen Milroe went 3rd round, and there was buzz. Jalen Milroe could be the 1st round guy. Like there were falls in this very draft at the quarterback position.
I've always said I haven't always said it because it's just happened the last year, but my new slogan is that like if Anthony Richardson and JJ McCarthy can be 1st round quarterbacks, then I literally don't know what a 1st round quarterback is.
No one does. We're all just taking the best we're guessing the best we can. Like anyone who says they know what they're doing when it comes to quarterback evaluation. I mean, it's just you're doing the best you can, man.
And who got Milroe, do you know off the top of your head? Seahawks. I feel like Milroe, it seems like a great 3rd round pick. Like just roll the dice, see if you could design an offense around that dude's athleticism. Like
it's where Anthony Richardson probably should have gone, where he gets to sit and learn for a couple of years, and you bring him in and it's like he wasn't ready. Like
he should not be the savior of someone's franchise.
No. Right.
No, I'm right there with you when it comes to that. But all the Shedeur stuff was kind of the pretext of what I was going to say, because I felt like we had to address the Shedeur stuff. But Quinn Ewers was like my biggest gripe of the weekend, because like I feel like most people spent the past week or two criticizing Nico Iamaleava for chasing the bag, whatever, overplaying his hand. I know I made a comment about him overplaying his hand. Carson Beck's been criticized by Georgia fans for, now he's all the guy cares about is NIL and whatever, making money. He's chasing the bag. And so you know what Quinn Ewers did? He could have supposedly made $8 million if he would have gone, who knows what those numbers really are, but if he would have gone somewhere else in the portal in North Carolina.
Well, it was reported he could have been the highest paid quarterback in college football this year if he had returned for one more year, right? Yeah, that was the theory. If he went back for one more year, he'd be the highest paid quarterback in college football potentially.
And I saw the tweet that said it went from $8 million to $800K by being a 7th round pick. But this guy, that's what he did. He turned down those NIL offers. I guess he loved the school he went to. He loved the university, and he was ready to go to the NFL. And now he's being clowned for being a 7th round pick. Like these guys are just, it's like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. Like that's why these fans are so fickle. Bro, just get as much money as you can while you're in college. Do what's best for you at all times, because no one cares that you didn't transfer. Like, oh, he's Texas Longhorn through and through. It's like now he's being clowned because wow, you were a 7th round pick. You probably should have stayed in college, dude. That wasn't a very good decision. It's just this discourse of people just trolling everyone. It's like it's become, I don't know, insufferable to me.
Yeah, I mean, that late, I thought he would go late. I didn't think he would go because was he 7th round? I think he was last. He was in the final round,
Yeah,
right?
he was 7. I want to say like 230 or something.
Goodness gracious.
Overall.
I mean, that's late, but it's also like, hey, the Dolphins, he's in a pretty good spot actually. With Skylar Thompson and Tua Tagovailoa, if he can't stay healthy, then Quinn Ewers might be right there. But it was kind of like, it also, I think, adds to Steve Sarkisian's season for Texas, because that was like the quiet, like no one wanted to say the quiet part out loud about Texas, where it was just like, are we sure Quinn Ewers is good? Like we're watching all year where it's like, are we sure? Or is Texas just had a really nice schedule and their defense is really good? Because you saw a bunch of guys get drafted again for Texas. A lot more on defense, I want to say, this year. Their trench play was awesome. But like they didn't play Georgia well. And that was their toughest competition. And it was like, I mean, outside, I guess, Arizona State, he threw some dimes. He was pretty good, I guess, in the Arizona State game. But outside of that, do you remember like a lot of great Quinn Ewers tape from last year? It didn't feel like Quinn Ewers was very good last year. And it was just kind of like when we were talking about like, oh, he's someone you got to go, like come back for one more year. Like I get it from his side of like, get one more year of college football, whatever. But like, I don't know. It's just like he's a weird what if guy, because I don't think he had a good year at all. And I think that was just something that was never really talked about because Texas was so good around him. No one was like, Quinn Ewers is not a very good quarterback this year. And just like, because he was a bottom half SEC quarterback, I would say, right? I think he was worse than Nico.
See, I don't think he was, to be honest. I think, and so by the way, he went 231 overall.
Okay.
One after Dan Jackson. Like who would have told you Dan Jackson was going to get drafted ahead of Quinn Ewers? Like that's wild. So I know I know the English Premier League is probably not a big crossover with our audience, but European soccer in general. But me and my brother talked about it. I compared to a guy named Mesut Özil, who's this German attacking midfielder, and he just had a very nonchalant way of playing. And he's so damn smooth, but when he's playing bad, it looks really bad. When you got a nonchalant kind of style and then you're throwing picks, it's like, what the fuck are you doing out here, man? You're just throwing that sidearm just up. What the hell is that? Like, do you even care? And I feel like he has this curse of like, he just kind of wings it. He's like, I like his style personally. I kind of like Quinn Ewers more than most people do, but he just has like a certain style that when you're playing poorly, like an Andrew Jones, maybe that's a better comparison. Like, when Andrew Jones is dropping fly balls, it's like, well, bro, maybe you shouldn't have tried to catch it underhanded. Like, what are you doing out there in center field? Like, don't try to, pimp everything out there. So I think Quinn Ewers kind of suffers from that curse of just like the body language and like people are overly critical of him. And also, I mean, the albatross that's sitting over him is that he's the highest ranked high school recruit of all time. So it's like, it sucks because he never told anyone he was the greatest high school recruit of all time. Other people said that. And it's like, maybe those people were wrong about him, but I feel like he was still a really good college football player. Like the Michigan game, I would say that was probably one of his better performances this year. Michigan's defense, for as, mediocre as they were, the defense was still really good this year. And that 2023 performance against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, like that was big time. I don't know. Everyone is just obsessed with Arch Manning and everything. I feel like he was kind of unfairly criticized all year long. But NFL, like there's no narratives and stuff the NFL cares about. I think they're all about how can you help us win. So if they deem him a 7th round pick, like not that they're always right, like we just got finished saying, but that definitely surprised me. I think Quinn Ewers, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was like the 4th or 5th quarterback taken in this draft, like ahead of like a Dylan Gabriel or something. Like I don't know. I still believe that Quinn Ewers can be an NFL quarterback.
We'll see. 7th round's tough. I don't think there's a lot of, like we talked about Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant late, but it's not a strong track record, I don't think, of 7th round guys ended up being long-term NFL
No,
stars. You're
definitely right.
But Matt Green, switching gears here a little bit as we continue on our program report series here. Who is trending up, who is trending down. Next up on the list, maybe the most, I don't want to say controversial, that's not the right word, mercurial, maybe the most difficult to parse where they're at as a program, because one year their coach is the most obvious hot seat candidate to the next where it's like, actually, Florida could be have the best quarterback in the SEC and also compete for a real CFP run here. It's just all over the place in terms of what folks think about Florida and where their program is at as a whole. But what say you, Matt Green? Is this a program on the upswing, or do you think it's still pretty level and you're unchanged from what you thought a year ago, or do you think it's on the downward swing still?
I don't know. I mean, define upswing, right? Like, Mullen ended with a 6-win season. Napier started with a 6-win season, then to a 5-win season, and then they won 8 games last year. So I think you'd have to say they're improving. I think this year is a massive year for Billy Napier. Kind of goes without saying, because it feels like you're right. It feels like they could be a playoff dark horse, or they're firing their coach by week 6. And like those two possibilities seem like equally as likely.
It's so hard. I mean, there's that weird stuff with DJ Lagway all spring about the shoulder that we'll just never have clarity on. But he also went 6-1 as a starter. He was really good in the Georgia game before he left that game. I mean, he was good. Like, one of the weird parts is I think Florida, if Graham Mertz doesn't get hurt last year in the Tennessee game, I think there's a strong possibility Tennessee loses that game to Florida at home. But it's so hard. Like, they're a harder team for me to parse through than South Carolina, because I think South Carolina has a safer floor than Florida in 2025. I like both quarterbacks. I think Lenora Sellers and DJ Lagway are one of the two best in the SEC. But I think the ceiling at Florida is higher. I think they're going to have a higher talent blue chip composite than South Carolina. South Carolina lost a lot of good pieces, Kennard and company, to the NFL draft. They bring back Dylan Stewart and company, but I don't know. Speaking of, by the way, someone made a note on Twitter about, like, as we continue to show like the guys who left for what they thought were greener pastures and it didn't work out. Juice Wells did not go well at Ole Miss, and I think he went undrafted, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing his name.
So it's like, and he was just a big time get for Ole Miss at the time. And then it just did not go well leaving South Carolina. So you just never know, man, with this stuff. But I don't know. I think if DJ Lagway's healthy, you have tape. Like, it's not one of those like unknown things with Florida. Like, we've seen DJ Lagway play really good football, and we know he has a cannon. We know he's super talented, number one quarterback in his class. Like, DJ Lagway is special. Like, I think we can say for certain that DJ Lagway is a special quarterback at Florida, and one of the most special quarterbacks they've had, since Tebow? Like, is this if you're a Florida fan, have you been as excited about a quarterback since Tebow? Like, it's
absolutely not. No, I'm not on that at all. Are you kidding me?
The upside, like, we've seen, I mean, he's 6-1 as a starter.
Kyle Trask was a Heisman finalist. Like,
well, hold on. We knew he did not have the same kind of upside that DJ Lagway had. And DJ Lagway was a true freshman last year. He wasn't even a redshirt. Like, he was balling as a true freshman.
I'll be honest. DJ Lagway in 2025 DJ Lagway feels like 2024 Nico Iamaleava. Like, I don't think so. He obviously has some experience. Nico is kind of coming in just completely, had 2 games to finish that year before at the end of the season. But I feel like people are putting way too much hype on DJ Lagway. And the injury stuff, like, terrifies me. Like, that's been really weird. Also, like, I mean, the way he got, like, taken off against Georgia, where it was like, oh wow, it looks like his season's over, and then he was back, like, he missed like 1 game. That was very strange. But I don't know, just like how he's missed spring, and they're like, oh, he hasn't had some sort of thing in his shoulder since high school, or I don't know. It's like this lingering like, this dude threw 12 touchdowns and 9 picks last year. Like, I don't know. It completed 58% of his passes. Like, he was a true freshman. I think Lagway could get significantly better, and he could become one of the best quarterbacks. But, like, Lenora Sellers was one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC last year. Like, I think he seems like way more of a known commodity. Lagway just feels like you're banking on a huge mystery box, and maybe it's a boat. We've always wanted one of those. But I think Lagway he has potential, but in terms of, like, saying he's like a generational quarterback like Tebow, like, I don't know. I'm not there on Lagway yet.
I'm not saying he's Tebow. I'm saying if you're a Florida fan, you're as excited about a quarterback you've had since Tebow. Like he
You don't
feels
remember the
like
Jeff Driscoll hype?
I just think Lagway. Like, would it surprise you if Lagway wins a Heisman in the next 2 years? It wouldn't surprise me.
I guess it wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me, but would it surprise you if he just wasn't that good?
I think it might be the stuff around him, or he can't stay healthy. Like that to me, the thing that might prevent DJ Lagway from reaching his full potential more than anything is his health. Because I think Florida has done they were very, very aggressive this offseason, both in the portal and recruiting. They finished strong. Dallas Wilson looks like a freshman dude for them at receiver. He's going to have Baugh at running back, I think is a really good player for him. Like, I think they have really good pieces around DJ Lagway to thrive here next year. The problem is the schedule that they had last year. It's basically what they have this year. And I don't know if you're at, if you think it's harder or easier, but like, they could be really good and still be like 8-4. Like you said, they won 8 games last year against a hard schedule, but they also might be better. So should we look at them differently as like a 9-3, 10-2? I don't know. They get Tennessee at home. They got to go to Ole Miss, but yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Before you get into the schedule, the last thing I'll say about the quarterback thing is just like we were just finished talking about how the NFL misevaluates college quarterbacks all the time. Like colleges misevaluate quarterbacks, high school quarterbacks even more often. Like we were just talking about that 2023 class that Nico was in with who else? Jackson Arnold and just
Malachi
like
Nelson.
None of like the top 5 or 6 have been good to this point. So it just wouldn't surprise me if Lagway he's got a bunch of talent and maybe he's not a superstar, you know? So I think the odds are always against anyone being a superstar because those dudes are so rare. But back to what you're saying about the schedule, unless you had anything else to say about Lagway.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I don't know. I'm I guess a Lagway optimist in what he's going to be. And look, it's not great for Tennessee if DJ Lagway is great, but I don't know. Yeah. I think Lagway is going to be really good at Florida. That's just my gut there. I will say though, you look at the schedule. You go to LSU early. You go to Miami, Texas at home. That's 3 straight weeks, man. Like that's just brutal. Then you go to A&M. You get Georgia on November 1st. Then you go to Kentucky that you've struggled with over the last couple of years. Then you go to Ole Miss. Then you get Tennessee at home. Then you get Florida State at home. I mean, I don't know. That looks like an 8-4 best case scenario 9-3 schedule to me. But I don't know. Florida could maybe turn the corner here in 25 because they won a lot of games that I don't think either of us thought was coming based on their schedule last year. And I think this is a better team than they had a year ago. So I don't know. It's just still, you look at that schedule, man, it's still just brutal. Like they can make progress, and I still that's one of the more crazy schedules in college football this year.
Yeah, it really is. And you look at, like you said, at LSU, at Miami, and at A&M, and then just throw in, just right in the middle of that is a team that's probably going to be the number 1 team in the country in Texas. I think most people have preseason number 1. Like that 4-game stretch right there, like. You're going to know everything about Florida's season. If they're 4-2, it's like, okay, Gators could be legit this year. But if they're 2-4, it's like, they could be a scrappy team, but that's a ridiculous schedule. So, I don't know. And then obviously we're not even talking about Georgia and Ole Miss and Tennessee and Florida State there in the back end. So, and I would just assume Florida State is not as terrible as they were last year. Like that just seems like so crazy to go from 13-1 to 2-10. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see that.
I think we might see it more than you think. And then the modern era of college football with just so much movement and like those teams that just go like Ole Miss. I don't think they're on 2-10, but they're still just like, I don't know if they had a bad evaluation period with some transfers, like, does that just completely just torpedo one of their seasons? I don't know. Like, I guess it's still possible. It just depends on. I think it's way more possible at the G5, I think, than the Power 2 or Power 4, because the G5 you just get rated. So if you have a great 10-2, 11-1 season at the G5 level, and then your talent gets rated, then you go 2-10, 3-9 next year. You're like, wait, what happened to them? They used to, they just were awesome in the Sun Belt last year, and you're like, oh right, they lost 27 guys to the portal to SEC and ACC teams. Like, okay, that's why they fell off a cliff. You know.
No, and I think that's fair. And you just look at like what Florida was defensively last year. Like they were 15th in the SEC in total defense in terms of yards per game. Like like 12th, I think, among 16 teams in scoring defense. Like, if they're gonna have to be better on defense. Lagway alone can't just like make this team a contender. Like, they're gonna have to be like Nico. Like, Tennessee almost won despite Nico at times last year because they were so good around him, other than maybe the receiver position. But Lagway is gonna have to actually be the guy if Florida is even sniffing 8-4 or 9-3 next year.
So to put a bow on it, what's your gut? Does Florida and Billy Napier break through this year or next year? And this is a program on the rise?
If we're saying on the rise, they have to win more than 8 games, right? Because they won 8 in 2024. I'm thinking they're not winning 8 in 2025. So I'm putting them on the decline. Maybe not Lagway in general, but I just think it's an uphill battle for Florida with this schedule and everything they got going on. I don't know. I'm going downhill.
Can I say if it's between like LSU, Florida, and South Carolina, which of the three is most likely to break through as the 4th playoff team in the SEC? Because I think it's so early to call locks, but like I'll just be surprised if Georgia, Texas, and Alabama aren't 3 of the 4 SEC teams that get in this year. Like, if I look at those 3, who do I think is the most likely to join that party, that crash that party? I think it's Florida.
Really?
I think Florida's going to be really good this year, next year.
I am not putting Florida ahead of South Carolina or LSU. That's actually a teaser because I thought we were going to talk about our October games. We were talking about September last week. We'll do that, I think, next week. LSU at South Carolina is one I'm really excited about next year. Like, and that was like maybe the game of the year last year. So in Death Valley this year. I don't know. Let
me put my caveat. If DJ Lagway plays 12 games this year, I think Florida,
we're assuming health. I don't know. Maybe it's just recent history with LSU, like what I've lived through, that it's just like LSU's ceiling just always feels higher. Like, I don't know. I think LSU could be a sneaky team this year. But like we're just saying with Lenore,
well, you know what it is? I think Florida's my Ole Miss this year. Where last year, all I was doing was like, Ole Miss is one of the 4 best teams in the SEC, and they're like, it's their fault. They lost to Kentucky at home in bizarre fashion. They did this to themselves, but I still will maintain to the end of times that I think they were better than Tennessee last year, and I think they were one of the 4 best teams in the SEC.
Looked a whole lot better than Georgia. I don't think any Georgia fan would argue that we were better than Ole Miss
like, and they should have been a playoff team, but they didn't take it. I think that could be Florida next year, where Florida is like 8-4, 9-3 at the end of the year, and they miss out on the CFP. But we look around, and we're like, that Florida team was really good. They just didn't take care of 1 or 2 games they should have, and that's why they're out.
Well, they go 8-4, but they lost to Kentucky and
Florida, and you're like,
State or something. You're like, are you kidding me?
No, like 9-3. Can you imagine they go 9-3 and miss the CFP because they lost to Kentucky on the road? Like, that's one of they like have all these big wins and they lose to Kentucky on the road.
No, that'd be brutal, but we'll see.
Kentucky's gonna be awful though. Like, Kentucky I think might be the worst. Kentucky is a sneaky like worst team in the SEC bus. Like the Zach Calzada experience and just the vibes there. I could not hammer the under. We're not at our over-under period yet here. We'll get to that this summer, but man, I could not hammer the under. Everyone's going to Mississippi State. I have Kentucky as the worst team in the SEC next year.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I mean, you started a guy, however many games, who retired from football. Like, maybe there's other reasons that went into it, but I think if he could play at a big-time level, he probably wouldn't be retiring yet. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if Napier makes it to November, honestly. Like, this schedule is just, with these first 6 weeks, like, I think it's just going to be obvious, like, what this team is. And maybe with the schedule, they'll be a little more understanding. And it's like, it's all about, getting this team ready to be a contender in 2026 or something for year 3 of Lagway or something like that. But I don't know. I will say an uphill battle.
South Carolina is just obvious. Like, until it happens, they've just never broken through, nor will they ever break through. I'm not doing that. They're going 8-4, 9-3, and missing it again. I just think it's gonna be Florida or Auburn as the team who gets that 4th spot, the chaos team that just has a great year and breaks through. I think it's one of those 2, but I'm leaning Florida right now.
Yeah, it's like I can see that. It's like South Carolina is kind of weird because it's like they had like I don't know. It's like they had a perfect storm to have the season they had, but at the same time they didn't because they got robbed in that LSU game, and then also like almost beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So getting Alabama in Columbia, like there's a lot of things going for South Carolina. But yeah, can they have like 2 like legitimate years in a row? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But Shane Beamer, I think you don't want to give Shane Beamer credit. But like this guy has like kind of broken through like every year. Like he's had like 3 seasons now that have been like overachieving seasons from like what expectations were. I mean, Shane Beamer, he's at South Carolina. Like, what do we really expect?
I mean, Steve Spurrier won a lot at South Carolina.
Yeah, but Steve
Lou
Spurrier
Holtz
is one of the
did pretty
greatest
well
coaches.
at South Carolina.
But he didn't inherit Lou Holtz or Steve Spurrier's South Carolina program.
Right.
Like he inherited.
He's 29 and 22 at South Carolina. He went 5-7 in 23, so I wouldn't say he overachieved 2 years ago. He finished strong in 22, obviously, with the Tennessee and Clemson wins. But those, like at that point, he was 5-5 going into that Tennessee game in 2022. I think he had a good year last year, but I don't think he's broken through at all.
It doesn't matter what he was going in, and he finished beating Tennessee.
He was 5-5 going into 2022. I mean, he's been kind of a 500 coach there. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a hard job. I mean, I don't think Beamer's broken through. Like, but I mean, you got to win double-digit games at least once. Eli Drinkwitz has won double-digit games back-to-back years.
I mean, this team went 2-8 in 2020 and 4-8 in 2020 and 2019. Like,
but what do you think's a harder job, Mizzou or South Carolina?
I mean, probably South Carolina. The in-state rival, I think that makes South Carolina a little tougher than Missouri. Like being the second school in your state, I think that like having to recruit while Clemson's a powerhouse also. Like they're kind of coming down, but I don't know. I think Shane Beamer, I think that 2021 year winning 7 games, like and going to a bowl game, like year 1, I think was an overachieving year. 2022 winning 8 games that year, like and beating Tennessee.
He got hot the last little bit. Like it was just
whatever it takes, man. It counts. Those are the 2 biggest games of the season.
I wouldn't say overachieve. I just think that's aggressive. I think he's doing okay. I think he's fine. It hasn't been a disaster. I think he's fine. Has it been that much different than Will Muschamp?
I mean, I think it's got to be, right? I mean,
what was Will Muschamp at South Carolina?
6-7 year 1, then 9-4, 7-6, 4-8, 2-8.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what this year is going to be, but like those first 3 years, pretty close to what you've seen from Beamer.
Yeah, but he inherited a much better program. I mean, like the Spurrier's last year was bad, but like, I mean, 11 wins in 2011, 2012, 2013. Like South Carolina was just a much more legit program. I think when Muschamp took over, like Beamer had to build that back. Like
I think Beamer's a better head coach than Muschamp, but I mean, I still just like he's good, but I mean, he's not like this is a big year for him with Lenora Sellers coming in. I think this is a huge year for the Beamer narrative. This has got to be his 2023 Mizzou.
Yeah, I mean that probably. I mean, but they're not going to have the schedule of 2023 Mizzou, so right. It's going to be tough for sure. But they haven't been preseason ranked any of the years he's been there. Like that's part of it. It's just the expectations. And I don't know what the over/under win totals were each of those years, but I would guarantee they went over on 3 of those 4 years. Year 1, 2022, and then last year in 2024.
I have to go back and look.
So I feel like I feel like they've kind of consistently overachieved. Finished ranked 19th in 2022. Finished ranked 15th last year. Like I think that's big time at South Carolina. So I think you're right. This is a massive year. I just think there's more. It feels like there's more aligned for them to have a good year and to kind of break through because they just almost did break through last year. And there was people who legitimately thought South Carolina should get that 12 seed. But I think Florida just feels like they're having to take a way bigger step against an even tougher schedule. I just don't see Florida breaking through this year.
We shall see. Final thing here tonight, Matt Green. 247 Sports did a interesting Grant Hughes of SEC spring standouts with some intel there and highlighted one player on each team. I thought this was interesting. Was there any name in particular that stood out to you of like, oh, okay, if he had a good spring, it could even be a dog. They're like, oh, that's an interesting development, and that could be huge for Team X. Is there one that stood out to you here that folks can go find on 247sports.com by Grant Hughes?
One disappointing one. Oh, also, not to make it all about Georgia, but Xavier Sorry was the standout for Arkansas. Was he on that 2020? He must have been on that 2021 Georgia team, I'm pretty sure. So, we could still be adding to that total. I don't know if you saw that. Georgia trying to set that record from most players from one team drafted. But Eric Singleton won here for the Georgia Tech transfer from Auburn. I think that makes Auburn just feels like a really dangerous team if they have some sort of like dangerous passing game this year. And obviously we know how good the receivers they already had were. So I think that's big. But just to go back to Georgia, like they had Justin Williams, the linebacker. It's kind of crazy what the conversation is out of Georgia's like inside linebacker room, because Raylan Wilson and CJ Allen are the two like returning like veterans, but there's nonstop talk about Chris Cole and Justin Williams, who were both true freshmen a year ago. It's like those are the guys with the higher upside maybe, but that room in general is just going to be just stupid loaded. Like Georgia's going to figure out how to get all those guys on the field as much as they can.
That's fair. I think for me, it's Austin Simmons at Ole Miss, because we've just kind of assumed there was going to be a fallback of sorts moving on from Dart, because, I mean, he's been the quarterback for a couple of years now, and it was obviously, I think he left Ole Miss's all-time passing leader. So that's hard to replace anyway. But he filled in great in that Georgia game that we all saw, where he had that drive and drove down the field and scored. And it was like, uh-oh, this game was good. Like, remember how that vibe felt? Like, it was rainy, and it looked like, uh-oh, Ole Miss is going to get skull bashed here. Like
Georgia forced the turnover on the first, then Dart goes to the locker room.
You're like, this is 7-0. A disaster for Ole Miss. And then from the Austin Simmons drive on out, like it was like, oh no, like they took Georgia's best punch and were like, nope, like we're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, I feel like Austin Simmons kind of calmed the whole rest of the team down. I was like, nah, we got this. And then Dart came back in.
But it's like, if Simmons is good, is he this year's Lenora Sellers? Where it's like he's a guy who's not a 5-star big name at one of these SEC schools, but he's waited his turn a little bit, and he's just someone who is going to rise. Where you look around, you're like, he's not going to be flashy. He's not going to be someone who you look at the same way you look at DJ Lagway or Garrett Nussmeier. But what if he just, like, because Lane Kiffin is the best play caller in the SEC right now, and they still did pretty well in the portal right now, and I think their over-under is still like 8.5 going into this year. Like, what if Austin Simmons is like better than Dart? Like, what if that's something where you're looking for like the next breakout SEC quarterback? What if it's in Oxford? I don't know. I think that's definitely possible, because he showed he showed some stuff. Dual sport athlete. I think he played some baseball at Ole Miss, and he stopped doing that to focus on football full time. But he's interesting. Like Austin Simmons, because Kiffin has not done that yet, right? Like Kiffin hasn't delved into like an in-house developed guy. So I don't know. It's an interesting story to monitor, because like if Austin Simmons just fills right in for Jackson Dart, is Ole Miss more of a playoff threat than we're giving them credit for going into the year?
Yeah, I think that's a good call, because I'm not really thinking much about Ole Miss right now. I kind of felt like 2024 was all the stars aligning for Ole Miss, and that really was their year. But if Austin Simmons is that guy, like that definitely will change things a little bit. I don't know that they'll be as dominant on the defensive side as they were last year, losing some of those guys. But yeah, I mean, that if he is, I think the upside of Austin Simmons is legitimately like the best quarterback in the SEC, like just being Lane Kiffin's guy and what we've seen like in a small sample size. And part of it's like, I don't know who the best quarterbacks in the SEC are right now. There's a lot of question marks around the conference, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a good call. I'm definitely not putting Ole Miss there right now, but if Austin Simmons, if he is that dangerous, and it wouldn't surprise you with Lane Kiffin's track record, Ole Miss probably is more of a contender than we're giving him credit for. And the schedule is still not terrible, if I remember correctly. Like it's not the most difficult in the SEC. They do have to go to Athens though.
Yeah. They're an interesting one. But yeah. Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. What about you? What about Georgia Voice of College Football? What can the good folks check out from you over on that channel this week?
Yeah, we'll definitely dig into more of that NFL draft stuff, breaking down some of the Georgia players. Jared Curtis, number 1 quarterback in the country, announcing a week from Monday. So yeah, we'll have to talk about some of that stuff. But yeah, big Jackson Cantwell also moving his commitment date back to take one more unofficial to Oregon and Georgia. So we'll see what that means. So both of those guys coming down to Oregon and Georgia. And I think Cantwell has a couple others in that group. I can't remember exactly who. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Who was the last? It was interesting. Like, who was the last like big player who committed, decommitted, then committed back to the same team? It feels like that doesn't happen very often.
Do
you remember a Georgia player doing that?
Yeah, I feel like no, Isaiah Gibson. There's been a lot of guys that have decommitted somewhere else and then end up committing.
Right,
to Georgia.
That's what I'm saying. That happens all the time, but I haven't seen someone who committed, decommitted, and then came back to the original team.
Yeah, put me on the spot. I'm not sure I can think of one off the top of my head. Because what's his name from Manchester? Justice Terry. He had Georgia in that group, but ended up committing to Texas the second time around. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I'd have to think about that.
That's the thing. I think it's kind of unprecedented if he picks Georgia, because like you just don't see that very often. I feel like guys who were committed somewhere, decommitted, and then committed back later on in the same cycle. I guess the only one that comes to mind right now, fresh, is, and it doesn't even really count, is the quarterback for Cal now. Jaron, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, the 5-star lefty from Hawaii.
Yeah,
he was committed to Cal for a long time. Then it was a late flip to Oregon. Was at the Rose Bowl in Oregon stuff, and then he transferred back to Cal. So I guess he kind of counts. Also, are we going to call him an Oregon transfer because he suited up kind of in a game he couldn't play in the Rose Bowl for the playoff game?
He was in uniform?
He was in uniform, yeah.
Wow. I don't know.
I mean, is that really what they're going to call? They're going to call him a Oregon transfer for his entire career? Like, is that what we're going to do?
Well, you did see the receiver from Texas Tech who transferred.
He went back, but he transferred. Like, it was like one of those where he enrolled and left. Like, we haven't seen someone who, I just feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but drop it in the comments and let us know if there is someone that we're omitting here. But if Curtis does it next week, it would be interesting, because I feel like it just doesn't really happen very often.
No, that's definitely true. And it felt like a noble reason. Like he was like wanted to take visits and just like didn't feel right saying he was committed to Georgia while taking all these visits.
You want Jared Curtis on the Georgia Bulldogs. You don't have to.
No, I'm just saying it didn't seem like a typical kind of decommitment. You know, it was like Georgia's still in play, but I'm not committed. So let's open things back up. But Georgia's still on the
anyway,
board.
that's
I'm very high on Jared Curtis. I would say this is one of the recruitments I've been kind of hanging on more so than in recent years, because, you know, with what Georgia's quarterback room looks like right now, I think, you know, we've seen Georgia in recent years kind of miss out on some of these recruiting battles that might go down to the highest bidder. And according to Steve Wiltfong, like maybe Georgia's, you know, increasing some of their bids in this 2026 class. Like, we'll see. Like, maybe they're supposedly, not to start a whole nother comment because we're trying to sign off here, but supposedly Steve Wiltfong said Kirby Smart thought some of these high schoolers were full of shit with what they thought they were going to make, what they were making. And maybe he's seen the light. They're like, wow, some of these guys actually are making this money. We'll have to get in on that as well. But, you know, we'll see. It's going to be a big week for that Jared Curtis commitment. So looking forward to it.
We shall see. For the Georgia folks watching here, make sure you go subscribe to the Georgia Voice of College Football and keep up with Matt over there multiple times a week on that channel. So, Matt Green, thank you as always, my friend, and I'll talk to you again next week.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm now joined by one of my favorites, Go Vols 247's Patrick Brown. Patrick, I'm going to have to tell you, you're going to have to pause your roster depth chart pieces, analyzing where things stand right now, because it's just ever changing. And just when you think you have a handle on what the position breakdown is going to be for Tennessee football, it's just another day in the life in what has been, I think, Josh Heupel's worst season of football, off-season football, since he's been at Tennessee. Just when you take into account everything from December to now, has just not been great, I think, by and large. But man, what a week. More transfers out. Still haven't got anyone in yet, really, in terms of where they're going to go at D-tackle, wide receiver. A couple people coming in this weekend. We'll see where that goes. But man, how tired are you of trying to keep track of where things stand with this roster right now?
I mean, it's been a really busy spring portal window, which it hasn't been at Tennessee.
Yeah,
the last 2 years, right? They haven't even taken anybody. And then last year, I think they had just 2 scholarship guys leave. And if Jakobe Thomas follows through and formally goes in the portal, then that's 6, including your starting quarterback. That's the big one. And then, Jakobe Thomas is, right now he's projected to start at safety this season. And then Larry Johnson was going to be, at worst, your probably number 3 tackle. So, and then, there's some other guys too that have left. But yeah, as we're recording this, it's the last day of the portal window. So it's the last day people, guys can enter. Now there's obviously a little bit of lag time if somebody puts their stuff in late, as we kind of saw in the winter window with some last minute stuff, which, as you touched on it, it's been sort of certainly the most drama filled offseason of Josh Heupel's tenure. And I mean, the juju has not been great. I mean, you consider some of the stuff that went on back then, the injuries to Jerron McCoy and Miles Kitselman. And now some of, obviously the Nico thing is the biggest deal. But it's not slowing down. They've got to sort of, find some pieces at defensive tackle, at wide receiver. You have to wonder if safety is going to become a priority. I think it almost has to if Jakobe Thomas does end up leaving. So, the staff is having to make sure they get the job done in terms of bringing guys in and seeing if they can fill out the roster.
Yeah, the Jakobe stuff is weird to me because I will say I think people who locked in Jakobe as a starting safety here on April 25th, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I do think Idris Farouk is someone that the staff likes and someone who was going to push Jakobe, and because you also kind of rotated a pretty healthy amount that spot for the first time in the Banks era. Because remember, it was McCullough and Trey Flowers a bunch, and then it was McCullough and Wesley Walker a bunch, and Tamarion McDonald. Like, they all were just playing a crazy amount of snaps, and part of it was because they were older, but part of it was you just didn't have the kind of talent. Now you've kind of recruited pretty well there, and you have guys who, I mean, part of, I guess my question too is, like, Caleb Beasley gets moved to safety this spring. Like, we don't really know how the staff feels about him, and like, what if he had a really strong spring in their estimation? They're like, we feel okay with Caleb Beasley getting some snaps there, potentially. I do think with Slaughter, Charles, and Jakobe all in the portal here, I don't know if you feel the same, but my gut is one of them's back. I just think that's so much turnover where, like, that opens up some opportunity. And Jakobe, to me, feels like the more obvious one, but I also just wasn't sure he was going to be good enough in coverage to be a guy who Tim Banks plays a just crazy amount of snaps like he had some of those previous guys, because I just don't think he's an NFL guy, kind of like Jalen McCullough and previous guys back there. And I think Idris Farouk is coming on he's a good 2025 bet to see a huge jump in playing time. And obviously you got it locked down with Andre Turrentine, but I don't know. Where are you at with the safety spot? And do you expect that all 3 actually are gone?
I do think Slaughter and Charles will probably move on. I think Charles is reportedly visiting Virginia. Our Virginia side had reported that they were either working on a visit or getting him there. I think they mentioned another team. I don't want to say it in case I get it wrong. I don't want to be wrong, but those moves made sense, right? I mean, I thought John Slaughter was going to go in the winter window because he hadn't played a whole lot on defense. Obviously, a lot of players from that class that weren't playing a whole lot moved on at the sort of the midway point of their careers. But he was never really an issue or anything. So he gave it another spring to see, and then decided that was best for him. For Charles, his biggest thing has always been injuries. So wherever he is, he's got to stay healthy. And certainly he played through a shoulder injury last year for pretty much all of the season. So really tough kid, a really nice kid. You hope wherever he goes, it works out well for him. But he's probably thinking, hey, I've got to make the most of this year. I need to be on the field a lot. And as you mentioned, they rotated a lot at safety last season. And I've been under the suspicion this offseason that Tennessee philosophically is like, okay, we're going to play guys. We're going to rotate on defense. And that's why you saw them sort of kick around, bringing in another portal guy at linebacker, even though they just brought in 3 freshmen, 2 of them really talented. And we should throw in Brendan Ains had a nice spring too, because he was the one out there. So that, I think they were going to keep rolling with maybe 3 and 4 guys at safety. So if you're Charles, you're like, I need to be on the field more. That would make sense to maybe try to go somewhere else. Jakobe is the one that doesn't really make a lot of sense on the surface, but
yeah,
clearly I think if he thinks he's going to be a starting safety, he also may want to be paid like a starting safety. And that's just sort of the reality of college football in the NIL era. So I do think Farouk was already a big winner here, and I would throw in Caleb Beasley. We actually heard he had a really good spring. They're really encouraged by him. I think he could be the number 2 star, which is an important position if Boo Carter is going to be playing. We'll see how much offense he plays. If they're, he might be their backup slot at this point. If he's going to be a full 2-way guy, I don't see that, but I think he could end up in something more than just a sort of a change up jet sweep kind of role. So if he's playing a lot of snaps, you're going to need to maybe give him an extra breather or 2 on defense. So you want to feel good about that number 2 guy. And I think Caleb Beasley took some steps there. And it's funny with him because when spring started and the move was on, it was like, well, don't you have a big needed cornerback, right? Your best guy's down. You don't have a lot of depth behind Ricky Gibson, who was, had just said he was going to go in the portal too. And didn't have a lot behind him and Jalen McMurray. So why are you moving a guy? And then I think the move is sort of worked out so far, you have to say, given that I think he's positioned himself to have maybe a bigger role than he was going to have had he stayed at corner. So of those 3, I think there's still a possibility that Jakobe Thomas could be back. It's sort of a weird one because, a week ago on Instagram, he's like, oh, I'm so blessed to be where I'm at. And he's obviously talked a lot in the past about how much he's cherished playing at Tennessee. He didn't necessarily, he kind of grew up a little bit in Starkville, which is where he's from, but he also moved to Tullahoma, which is south of Nashville there for, I can't remember how old he was, maybe mid to late childhood and immediately adopted Tennessee. So he obviously has relished at the chance to play this program, which makes it kind of puzzling that he would hop in the portal or say that he's hopping in the portal the day before the portal window closes. But we'll have to see how it plays out. We'll have to see what his market is. Obviously, I think that's going to be a big factor. But if there's one of them back, I would say it's probably him, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
That one feels like a Mike Matthews type deal on the opposite side, where it's just like there's going to be some buzz. It kind of caught everybody by surprise. And then it's just like, I'm planning to enter. And we'll see if Tennessee is able to secure some kind of deal or something like that to just prevent that from happening. Because we'll see how much leverage. And we'll also see how much Tennessee really values Jakobe, right? And where they think they're at safety with the young guys. Because that was part of I think what you're seeing here, and I wonder if this is Tennessee's thinking a little bit too, Patrick, is that so your win total over under goes to 8.5 without Nico. We talked about just a tumultuous offseason here for Heupel's team. They brought in a great freshman class. There's a lot of dudes, and particularly in the secondary. They brought in Ty Redmond, Dylan Lewis. They have Timothy Merritt. They have Sidney Walton. They brought in a lot of guys in the secondary. So there's kind of an overall. So that's why you expect guys like Christian Charles or John Slaughter, because it's just they're kind of getting recruited over. And it's just kind of okay, if you're only going to play special teams, we can play these freshmen on special teams. And if Slaughter's not going to factor in the safety rotation, then it doesn't really make much sense at that point, just with roster allocation, resources and stuff. But I look at it and I'm like, I wonder if there's part of obviously this is not going to be said publicly, but I do kind of wonder, because you're just kind of where you're at quarterback, you're breaking in an entire new starting group of wide receivers. Ethan Davis is now looking like he's going to play a gigantic role for the first time at Tennessee. You're breaking in potentially a new starting running back, post Sampson and Peyton Lewis. You're breaking in a lot of new faces in the interior on the defensive line. You're breaking in potentially multiple new linebackers. And you see where I'm going with this, where I'm like, I wonder, this kind of leads into my raising an eyebrow question of I think they're just going super young, and this is kind of going to be more of a rebuild than I think we anticipated coming into the offseason. They just made the CFP, with Nico back and everything else, they're going to try and keep this thing humming and get back with a good schedule next year. I wonder if there's part of them that's let's just take our lumps with this talented freshman class, an expensive freshman class that we feel pretty good about, and then go into 26 with all this experience for a lot of guys that we like, and take our lumps that way. And we're not going to overpay for Jakobe Thomas because we don't think we're not winning a national title with or without Jakobe Thomas. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's some of the thinking here with some of these guys, and just kind of what the realistic outcome is for Tennessee next season.
I mean, it's a philosophical debate, right? I feel like I've had it several times. I might have had it with you, I think, on one of my previous appearances. Certainly have it on our message board at Go Vols 24/7. And that was something that came up when they were going to host Darius Thomas, that linebacker transfer from Louisville who played at Western Kentucky. And they had even offered another transfer, or kind of before the spring window really got going, at linebacker. And it kind of was puzzling because it's like you just brought in 3 guys. You have 2 redshirt freshmen too. They obviously really like Edwin Spillman, behind those starters. So why would you bring in a transfer there? Because of, I don't think that, like Jaden Perlotti and Jaden Harmon didn't flip from their commitments to Alabama or for UCLA and Alabama respectively for nothing. And it gets back to the point where, okay, if you're going to be all about traditional high school recruiting and you're going to invest there and you're going to go and do what you need to do to win those kinds of battles, you got to play those guys. And so I kind of felt like with this year, this was sort of an inflection point, given that this was going to be less of a veteran-laden team than maybe Josh Heupel has had in his first 4 seasons, to say, okay, we're just playing our young guys. We're bringing them in, and we're just going to play them. And that's, not to bring back Jeremy Pruitt days, but one of his things that he always said was like, the best way to get better at football is to play it. So, I mean, those young guys, whether it's some of the guys you mentioned in the secondary, whether it's some of those guys at linebacker, whether it's the freshman receivers, Travis Smith or Darius Jackson, best way for those guys to get better and for you to fully invest or to get, full return on your investment is to play those guys and have them develop. I mean, they're not going to get better playing, a handful of snaps against the Kent States and the Chattanoogas of the world. I mean, they need to play some meaningful snaps. And so I think this was a team and an offseason where there already was kind of going to sort of be a youth movement. Now, it's interesting, some of the things you pointed out that you sort of suggested that they might be willing to sort of take some lumps this year. Well, if they were going to get, take some lumps this year to make a run in 26, then they might be breaking in a freshman quarterback then, if it's Faison Brandon, if it's George McIntyre, or if it's Jake Merklinger, once they get past the one season with Joey Aguilar in that room. So, but I do think that it has kind of felt like that along the way, which with Jakobe's situation, it is like, okay, do we value, how much do we value experience? Do we need more experience because of all the things that you laid out where they're getting young, right? I mean, you get a guy, you just take the right tackle situation. Larry Johnson hasn't played a lot, but this is his 3rd year in the program. Now, instead of having him there, potentially you're going to have Sanders there, who's a freshman. So, and we kind of saw this with some guys, right? I mean, there's been a couple of older guys, maybe more established guys, Samir McDonald. I think you probably throw Squirrel White in this conversation as well, guys that have played and then maybe they've wanted a certain amount of value or a certain amount of money, a certain deal. And Tennessee said, we just don't value that. We don't, there's a difference in valuation, so to speak. So we'll see if that's the situation here. I think that could depend on, what kind of market and what kind of leverage, Jakobe Thomas ends up having, because, safety is not a huge position in the portal. I mean, if you go look at the 24/7 Sports rankings at the position, there's only maybe about a dozen guys that are 4-star transfers. And that's not to say that, some high 3 stars can't be difference makers or can't be starters for you, but it's just, what is his market going to look like? Because as we saw with Nico, his market, for not just the timing of it, but also everything that went on, it was not a great market. You had more teams that are saying, we're backing off, we're not getting involved in that than ones that did. So, we'll have to see if that's the same for Jakobe, and that could determine, how that plays out if he's back at Tennessee.
All right, Patrick, I need you to call your shot here on April 25th. Quarterback 1 versus Syracuse and QB1 versus Florida in late November. Who is it?
I'm going with Joey Aguilar. I
both?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
It's tough to tell what's going to happen in November. Could he get hurt? Sure. I would say that as long as he doesn't get hurt, he was going to be Tennessee's starter this season, or unless he just plays terrible, which I suppose is possible. But I think you saw enough of him at Appalachian State to think that, you plug this guy in with Josh Heupel and that coaching, it's going to be maybe boom or bust every Saturday. We were talking about this on our podcast, me and Ryan Callahan. Like, he is the kind of quarterback that could go out and maybe win you a game if he's, the swag's rolling and he's hot, he gets hot early, and some of those like no yes plays turn into yeses and big plays. But he also could 3 interception you out of a win against an Oklahoma or an Arkansas or something like that. That's just people just need to be prepared that he is sort of a guy that lives on the edge. But I don't know. I guess I'm maybe just not entirely sold on Jake Merklinger. I think he's a solid quarterback, but I think Aguilar raises their ceiling because of those things, right? Whereas I don't know that Merklinger was going to have that kind of ceiling. And I actually thought in the spring game that George McIntyre looked better, to be honest, in that setting, which you don't want to take too much from. But certainly, McIntyre is more maybe of an upside guy and than maybe Merklinger is. And again, Merklinger's talented. He's a really good runner. I think he's taken obvious strides. Even before all this Nico stuff happened, he was one of Tennessee's more improved players. He was a standout this spring, even before all of that. So I don't want to take anything away from him, but I don't know he's played 2 games at this level, 30-something snaps. I mean, to go from that to, the heat of the fall and you being the guy, that's a big step. So, Aguilar's played college football. He's 24 starts. We've seen him play well. We've seen him struggle. So I think I would be surprised if he's not the guy. And if he takes the job and plays well, I don't think it's going to be a kind of a back and forth deal. I think he would have to be hurt for him not to be QB1 for the whole season. That's just my opinion. Again, it's April 25th. We'll have to see. There's challenges, right? When is he going to get here? How quickly does he learn the offense? Does he learn his teammates? All of that stuff. They're unknowns, but I just kind of lean towards the experienced guy that has some of the tools that they could fit well in this offense.
I agree with they're going to lean towards experience. I think you're going to see him. I would not say shocked. I would be very surprised if it's not Aguilar versus Syracuse out of the gate. I will be very surprised if it's Aguilar against Florida late in the year. I'll be surprised if it's Aguilar after Georgia. That's my inflection point. Getting Georgia now, week 3, is bad, I think, for Tennessee and where they're at, because they're still, Aguilar, part of it is just timing. Aguilar, there's a couple things I worry about him. I don't think, he's a good fit for Heupel's scheme. You talk about the Baker Mayfield, that kind of guy where he's going to win you some games by some crazy stuff, and he's going to lose you some games with some crazy stuff. That's not the guy. Those aren't the guys who excel in Heupel's offense. Heupel's best quarterbacks are machines. They're guys who make one quick read and then they look progression. Okay, take off if nothing's there. Hendon Hooker was unbelievable at being the perfect just machine type quarterback. Dylan Gabriel, machine, super efficient, super high completion percentage. They don't throw picks. Hendon Hooker just did not throw picks. When Joe Milton started throwing picks over the middle, it was all right, middle is taken away. We're only doing side to side and we're running the football. I don't think Aguilar is someone they would have targeted if the circumstances were completely different in December. I don't think he would have been someone that Heupel and his staff would have prioritized. I can't speak to what Heupel and me personally knowing for sure, but from what I've seen, leading the country in interceptions last year just doesn't seem like something that Heupel is oh yeah, I can fix this. You kind of want to stay away there. I just think because he spent the last 2 years with a completely different offense at App State, and then spent all spring learning another very different offense with Tino Sinceri and what they were running in Indiana. That time is just wasted. He spent so much time learning all new signals, all new scheme, and now he's going to have 2 months to learn a completely new scheme again. That's 3 schemes in 1 year. I have a hard time believing that's going to go well. There's a lot of red flags to me about how this is ultimately going to go. The vibes might not be great right away if Angeli with Syracuse wins that job and outperforms Aguilar in the Benz on August 30th. But I just don't like the fit. I don't like I think it's going to be really hard for him to get on cue with Mike and Braylon and company when Jake has been here all spring and all winter throwing with them too. My gut is it's going to be Jake, and I think it's going to be Jake by the middle of the year. He's and you can speak to this better than I can, Patrick, but I just think there's some Dobbsiness to him where it's never going to be pretty in practice, where the practice report's going to be Jake's throwing darts all over the place. It's just you had those reports with Milton. Milton was an awesome practice player, and that's why he started over Hendon, right? In 2021 was he outperformed Hendon in practice in 2021. And then you put Hendon in the game and you're oh, this is completely different. My gut is that's more who Jake is. You throw Jake in a game, he's a natural runner. He is, I think, more of a natural leader than a lot of guys they've had recently. And I think he's going to settle in. I do think it's going to be Jake before it's all said and done. And if he gets that job, I don't think he's going to give it up, because I think guys are going to rally to him kind of in a Gunnar Stockton type way at Georgia. That's my gut, but I could be completely wrong. Am I being too hard on the Aguilar part of all of this? Because I don't see it, Patrick. I think this is a bad fit, and I don't think this is going to go well.
No, I don't think you're off base. I mean, there are some concerns. The interceptions are a big concern when you put up what he's 24 picks. I don't think Tennessee's as a team has thrown 24 picks in an entire Josh Heupel era. I think it's like 18.
And Heupel doesn't
there
stand for it.
inherently
Like, he'll
is
take it away. Like, he will not, like, picks are just picks. Like, they don't mess around with that. Like, you start throwing turnovers, like throwing picks, like, it's over.
right. But like, I think the reason I think that he is a good fit is because of how he plays. Like I said, he's a little chaotic. He's a little on the edge. And when this offense is humming along like it was tempo wise under Hendon those first 2 seasons, it's naturally going to be chaotic. Like there's just it's sort of helter skelter, right? And so if you have a guy that plays that way, like I said before, there are moments when it could turn out to be really good, right? If he's having to extend plays, throwing off platform, scrambling here and there, maybe he keeps an option read, keeps his own read and gets loose for a first down. He, a lot of his rushing yards at Appalachian State were on scrambles, so he wasn't he wasn't a huge designed run game guy, but certainly he's got the ability to keep the ball, pull it and keep it and get it 10 yards. He had like a 50-yard run in one game last season. So I think that playing style is maybe more, and like you said, like they, robotic, efficient. Yes, that's the best quarterbacks that Heupel has had, but there's also kind of that element to it where when things are going fast, you're going to sometimes have a defense that's not set and they end up having a guy come free on a blitz, or, when you're going so fast, maybe you don't get a protection call right, or maybe your offensive lineman doesn't get one and they turn a guy loose. And so you got to make something out of nothing. That's where Hendon Hooker was so good. And that's where a guy like Aguilar, I think, has that ability to sort of Houdini his way out of trouble and make a throw. So we've seen it, saw it in bits and pieces at Appalachian State. And I do think the clash of like, okay, this guy throws a lot of interceptions versus, Heupel's quarterbacks have not thrown hardly any interceptions. I think that's going to be an interesting clash. But and there are challenges, right? I mean, whether he gets here mid to late May or, UCLA semester doesn't end until June. I'm not about to try to explain how a guy can be taking online classes at one school and
this is what I'm saying. Like we're overlooking this, Patrick. It's blowing my mind. Like I'm reading this, I'm like, how is he taking classes at both? I didn't know that was legal. I didn't know you could do that.
I'm not smart enough to explain that, so I'm not going to try. But yeah, he's going to have to try to squeeze a full offseason into 2 months. It's going to, with no spring practice. And yeah, I don't think Tennessee would have gone after him in Aguilar. This is obviously, and I've said this is obviously the best of a bad situation. Some of the guys that they tried to get, but didn't really get any traction with, that were proven guys, is probably who they could have pulled in December had all this gone down then. So that obviously, I think when they tried with some Power 4 sitting guys, I'm not going to name any names because it's kind of over now, but they tried with a handful of guys and really, from what I was told, didn't hardly get anywhere. And so when this situation presented itself, they moved pretty quickly on it. I don't think they liked Angeli. They just maybe weren't enamored enough, because that one would have made a lot of sense, right? If you couldn't get a Power 4 guy, you needed to get somebody that was in a battle somewhere that maybe didn't feel like they were going to win the job. And they would look at Tennessee and say, I have a better chance of winning this one, even with, no spring practice. So a guy like him would have made sense, but I don't think they really ever pursued him that hard. And now they're going to, get to play him, which is an interesting twist.
And there is a chip on your shoulder situation there in Atlanta. Right. If like the guy that, y'all didn't think I was good enough and you went up to, oh my goodness, that's the most Tennessee thing of all time.
Right. But I mean, Syracuse, they lost a lot from last season. So, they're kind of a mystery too. And they seem to have had a lot of ins and outs in this spring window as well. So, they had to make the best of a bad situation. I just feel like I've always kind of thought in 26 it was going to come down to Faison and McIntyre. So I don't know if that maybe I shouldn't discount Merklinger as much as maybe I am. Certainly you're not. And there's a lot of people that aren't. And, to your point about him throwing darts in practice, I think he was doing a lot of that this spring from what we heard.
Well, I'm just saying, like, the arm talent. Like, everyone talked about Georgia's arm talent. Like, you saw it in the spring. It's just like the arm talent part of it is like you just see it with Nico, you see it with Joe, you see it with George, you'll see it with Faison. I just don't think Merk will ever be in that conversation, which is okay.
He's not, and neither is Aguilar, but they're good enough to make the throws that you need to make in this offense. and then you factor this, that the 4 new offensive starters on the offensive line, all new wide receivers, like, no Dylan Sampson. It's a total mystery. So, who knows how it's going to turn out? It could have turned out really well. I still think ultimately they'll be good enough on defense to be that the floor is 8 wins, but
you think the floor is 8 wins?
Again, we'll have to see. Mississippi State's bad.
Yeah.
Syracuse has got a lot of new players. Look, to me, the ceiling was always 9-3, and they could have had Pat Mahomes at quarterback because they haven't beaten Georgia since 8 years. And they haven't won in Gainesville or Tuscaloosa since I was in high school. So it's been a long time since they've left that stadium with the win or even played well in either of those two stadiums. So it was just hold
on. They've played well in Tuscaloosa the last 2 times. I mean, Tennessee beats Bama 2 years ago in Tuscaloosa if they have one more touchdown instead of a field goal in the red zone. And they're up 3 scores going into the half. I think they win that game. I think they just not being able to close one of those trips to the red zone, I think, was the difference between them winning. Because I think you come out, like, it's just a different vibe. And I think because Alabama was like, oh, we're just one quick score away from being right back in this. And obviously 2 plays and they're back in it with some bombs. And it's like, oh, I don't know. They played well in Tuscaloosa.
But that's, I mean, I guess the Gainesville is much more the house of horrors.
Gainesville is like the one I just got to fully see it. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, that's the one where, like, the Urban quote where you're like, what are we talking about? Like, it doesn't matter if it's Nico, whoever. Like, Tennessee, like, it hasn't mattered. Like, if we're throwing the Nico conversation as to why Tennessee's not going to win in Gainesville this year, like, what are we doing? Like, that's not, all right, sure.
Well, that losing streak to Alabama made sense, right? Because they were top of the top. The utility against Florida when Florida was changing coaches almost as frequently and, you know, taking their turn being a laughing stock kind of alongside you at various stages. That was obviously the much more frustrating one. But, I mean, Syracuse is obviously going to have a lot of new pieces. I like what Fran Brown's done there, turning that one around pretty quickly. But what are they going to look like? Can their quarterback, sounds like they had settled on a guy in the spring and now they bring in another guy. How's that going to play out? They're obviously losing, their running back is gone. He was a great player. The receivers that catching all those Kyle McCord passes, that room's been cleared out. Mississippi State, I still think is going to have probably one of the worst rosters in the SEC. Vanderbilt.
But if Shapen's healthy, Levy knows Heupel. That's the one. If you circle where you have to squint, where like which is the stink bomb on the road where you're like you can't explain it, and it's just that was Arkansas. A lot of people discounted Arkansas last year going into Fayetteville, and if Mississippi State's a little bit improved and Shapen's healthy, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't predict. I don't think it's as much more of a just a casual or like casualty situation for Tennessee like it was for Arkansas last year. But I mean, it's something you can't discount. You can't discount Heupel on the road in the SEC.
True. But at the same point, a couple of those maybe friskier games in Arkansas that beat you last year, that's at home. Oklahoma's the team that's the biggest wild card, I think, on the schedule because they made a lot of changes. They've hit the portal really hard. If John Mateer works out, that game becomes a lot harder. But will it? I mean, there's a lot of new things that they're looking to coalesce in 1 year that will it. And, I can't – that game's early November now? Have they been beaten down by the SEC again at that point? You just don't know. So, I look at the teams on the schedule and it's like, even if Tennessee's okay, I've kind of pivoted. I thought when Heupel was hired that they would be an 8-4 team kind of perennially. Now I think what I've seen them do over the past couple of seasons, I think I think they're always going to be good enough to beat the similar or worse teams. And it's just a question of how many per year of the, whether you want to say the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world, if you want to throw Florida in there because it's a rivalry game, if they can get, 1 or 2 of those and, but again, like you said, they've had sort of the head scratchers every year, right? I don't know that, you had the South Carolina one in 22, Missouri in 23, Missouri was good. So
I would say Florida in 23 was more the head scratcher. You go into Mizzou, you knew you were kind of, Mizzou was good. Mizzou went to Athens and gave Georgia a game. That Mizzou team in 23 was for real. 24 was fraudulent.
Again,
but
maybe I just discount the Florida one because, man, I've just seen so many times in that stadium where Tennessee just craps down its leg.
I mean, that was just horrific. The Florida one was brutal. That Florida team was not good. And
And then Arkansas last year, obviously. So, I mean, they do have a clunker every year, so you have to account for that. But, yeah, I mean, there's just so many question marks. And there were going to be question marks with the offense even if Nico was back. And I think the hypothetical that, we're going to hear so many who won the trade conversations, it's going to be ad nauseum over the next several months. We're never really going to know because we're never going to know what Nico was going to be like as a second-year starter here. What was that going to look like? He could go to UCLA and continue to kind of be so-so. And I would probably say, if I was betting right now, I would say that's probably what's going to happen, right? New offense, new team, lesser talent, lesser program. I mean, the Big Ten, I kind of crap on it a lot, but, they've got to play Ohio State, Penn State. They've got to play Utah, so I could see him going there and sort of being more of the same. And people will say, Tennessee doesn't miss it. Well, we don't know what he was going to do in this offense. Maybe continuity, maybe a third year in this program, maybe being around some of those younger receivers that maybe he knows a little bit better. I don't know. We'll just never know. And just like, that's sort of the trade, who won it kind of deal. We'll just, I don't think we'll ever know, but I
don't like the trade aspect because Tennessee wouldn't have made this trade. Like, that's the problem with all of this. It's like, this is not the problem with calling it a trade is that you're implying that this is something Tennessee would have agreed to if that was the parameters. Like, they're not doing this trade. Like, under any circumstances, just one for one. That's not happening under any normal circumstances.
Right. And could Aguilar be a hit? Could Mike Matthews be a dude? Could Braylon Staley kind of be the next guy in the slot? Yeah. Deshaun Bishop. Can he, that it's going to be a committee in the backfield, there's
Could
things
Boo Carter be one of the 10 best players in college football this year?
Right. I mean, there's so many things that could happen that aren't, far-fetched that would be good for Tennessee, but are all of them going to happen? It's tough to know. I think, again, I think this is going to have to be a team where the defense, which there should be too much of a drop off there with what they have. If you're able to stay pretty good on that side of the ball, you should be in a lot of games and maybe be good enough, like I said, to win some of those games against comparable or lesser teams. But, is that going to be good enough for you to beat Georgia in week 3, to win at Alabama, to win at Florida? If an Oklahoma, go back to 23, nobody thought Missouri was going to make that big of a jump. Maybe there's a team like that this year that makes a big jump that we don't expect. And, that becomes a tougher game. We just don't know. It's April 25th. Yeah. There's just so many unknowns. And even if Nico had stayed, there was going to be some unknowns, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. So now you just throw the big quarterback one in there. And we just don't know. I think a lot of national people will probably discount Tennessee. And, it makes sense because, like I said, you'd have to lay out okay, they need this, this, and this to happen. Are all those things going to happen for them to be at a playoff level? What are the odds?
Yeah, because last year it was just the secondary. You just needed the secondary to be better with the amount of transition from guys into the portal, and it was. And you're like, okay, awesome, that worked. Like you said, it's just a lot, man. They need the tackles to be a lot better. They need Ethan Davis to hit. They need Peyton Lewis to be ready to go. They need Deshaun Bishop to stay healthy for a full year. They need Mike Matthews and or Braylon Staley to have a star breakout role. They need Chris Brazzell to be able to play 60 snaps a game, it looks like. They need, you just go up and down the list. You need Jordan Ross to take a step in a significant way. Because Joshua Joseph's I don't think he's going to be a big sack guy. I think he's good, but I don't think... you're going to need Jordan Ross on the opposite side in the Rabbits package this year for that defensive line to get back to what they were 2 years ago. You need Jermod to be completely healthy coming back from a torn ACL. That's just, we have no idea. We're just penciling him in. It's Jermod's got to be ready to go. If he's ready to go and you're fine, then that helps a lot. The one I think is most likely, and we'll get out of here, is I do think Boo is going to be one of the best players in college football. I think him on punt returns is going to be electric for a full year. Him playing both ways, I just think he's going to be a big story. Boo Carter, I think, is Tennessee's best player, and I think he's going to be the best player for this year, next year. And he could be a big difference maker on defensive line that needs guys off the edge who are going to help put, where in those big games against Georgia and Ohio State, where it's Boo, if he's really mastered the star spot because they move him around so much and that position is so valuable, man, if he's able to stay healthy and build off that, I just think he's going to be a turnover producing machine and just someone who gives opposing quarterbacks all kinds of headaches because they have to account for where Boo Carter is at all times. He's the best athlete on the team.
I think he's certainly one of those guys. I think you're a little bit higher on than I am, but certainly
Join me, Patrick. We have to have some optimism here as Tennessee fans are like, goodness gracious, should we play the season?
I mean, like I said, the juju this offseason has not been great.
No.
So if anybody's super negative, I'm like, I can't really blame you. I try to we get so many varying opinions from fans, like, interacting with them on the message board and stuff, and I'm like I'm not going to tell anybody like how to feel, and it's some bad juju. And so, and it's such a difference from what so many of the past off seasons have been, where they've kind of been, I don't say boring, but they've not been like this. And so, what does the car look like? How do they keep it on the road and in the right lane? Obviously they're having a little bit of a, the engine's maybe coughing up a little bit. There's a tire maybe going down. But, stability has been such a key part of why this program has sort of taken off the way it has. And now there's a lot of signs of instability. Some of it's guys, with the portal. Some of it's, some bad luck with, McCoy and Kitzelman being injured. Can they push through it and come out better on the other side? Only time will tell. I mean, certainly you're going to have to lean on your culture that they talk about quite a bit. And you're going to have to feature guys. Like, you're going to have to play your talent. You're going to have to, if you need Boot Carter to play 25, 30 snaps on offense, play him 25, 30 snaps on offense. And he's going to have to do his part to be able to do that as well. Because I don't think he played, more than 50 snaps a game on defense and special teams last season. So he's got to make a big jump, just from a physical stamina conditioning level to be at, that, if he's going to be used that much, to be used that much over the course of a 12 game and beyond season. So, man, it's pretty crazy. And it can turn quickly to I just go back to that day against Vanderbilt. Like, that felt like such a crowning moment that, they managed some of the ups and downs of that season to get to the point where they got to the playoff, and they just get, they get smacked by Ohio State, which, a lot of teams that would have been on that opposite sideline that night would have gotten smacked by Ohio State. I mean, I think that was, they were just the unfortunate team on the other side. Now it's been all, the fallout is still kind of happening. So can they get over that and move past it and then, come out better for it on their side? We'll see. I think it's going to take, Josh Heupel's going to have to, he's going to have to earn it. And his staff are going to have to earn it, and his team's going to have to earn it. And certainly, they, this is very obviously, it's become more and more apparent. Like, this is a new year. They can't bank on, because they won 10 games last season, they're going to be at that level again. This team has got to sort of form its own identity and its own toughness and over the rest of this offseason. And that's obviously still a work in progress, and we won't see it until they get to the fall, and probably when they get to SEC play, when, go and get stuff, how do they respond, and what do they play like?
Patrick Brown, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Go Vols 247 this week?
Well, I did a little bit of a film breakdown on Joey Aguilar. That's normally an in-season thing that we do after games, where we sort of break down some of the key plays from games. I've done it for individual players before. I think the last ones I did it for were David Sanders and Faison back when they committed. But we did one for Aguilar to sort of introduce, because probably a lot of people didn't watch a lot of Appalachian State. And a lot of people are like, oh, we're getting this guy from UCLA. Well, he never actually took a snap for UCLA. So there's no point in, that's not where you're getting him necessarily from. So that was obviously pretty popular among our subscribers this week. Ton of NFL draft coverage this weekend. Obviously, James Pearce went Thursday night in the first round of the Falcons. There's some more guys that'll be coming off the board this weekend. Where does Dylan Sampson go? Dante Thornton, some of those guys on the defensive line. Who gets free agent deals after the draft is always a big deal. So we'll obviously have plenty of coverage on the draft. And I know Ryan Callahan will be talking to some of these transfer portal visitors as Tennessee sorts through their options on the defensive line at wide receiver, trying to find help at those two positions. We'll see what happens with Jakobe Thomas. And if he goes, what safeties, I would think they almost certainly will go after one if they haven't already. So we'll have full coverage, draft, portal, all that stuff will be on this weekend. And I think Ben's going to LSU for the baseball series. So we will have multi-sport coverage throughout the weekend and into next week. It is a busy time at Go Vols 24/7. And if you're out there and you're listening, you're a subscriber, we appreciate it. And if you're not, you're missing out. So give us a look.
Go subscribe. Go Vols 247 today if you are not already. Patrick Brown, thank you as always for the time, my friend, and we'll check back in again very soon.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.